Okay, the first thing, everybody, is if you have any comments or questions, please put them in the chat box, and I'll try and get around to those during the course of the moderated portion of the conversation. And even if I don't, at least you'll be in queue, so I'll have an order in which to take you. And then also, if there's redundant questions, I can filter them. I just wanted to say that Erica is a really magnificent Hollywood career coach. I've just really never been as impressed with somebody's advice as I have with hers. She's really got a profound intuitive understanding of this business. She's got a book that's coming out. It's the 26th, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just right around the corner, just next week, and you really should get it. It's a fantastic book. We'll be talking about that as well. This is not going to be an exhaustive exploration of the book. That's not the point of this. This is really to give you a taste of the book and give you a taste of Erica's coaching. And also, you're definitely going to come away with some inspiration, some motivation, some tricks to try. You're going to have an opportunity to ask Erica questions as well. And I really do believe that tomorrow you're going to be in a very different place with your career just by virtue of participating in this. Erica, you want to start by just kind of giving everybody kind of a quick little introduction of yourself and how you first became interested in the film business, and maybe just a brief walkthrough of how you got to being a career coach?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for that introduction, Brad. I just feel like I am not worthy of all of your amazing comments. You're so sweet. Brad got to read an early edition of the book, so thank you so much. And I'm happy to answer coaching questions and stuff like that too. If you guys want me to do a little coaching in here, I'm cool with that. Anyway, I moved to LA 12, almost 13 years ago now. And I had a dream of designing graphics for television. I grew up doing theater and singing and acting. And so I didn't want to do that anymore, but I still want to be connected to the industry because I just loved everything about it. And to be honest, I was very mesmerized by the Hollywood industry and Los Angeles itself. I did a summer program at UCLA when I was in high school, and I just thought LA was the coolest. Meanwhile, when we did that summer program at UCLA, we were in high school. We weren't really allowed to explore LA on our own. We actually were not allowed outside of a 2-block radius of the college. And I thought wow, LA is so beautiful and glamorous. But I only saw 2 blocks. But I still loved it so much. And so I really wanted to move back out here and design graphics. I went to art school. I have a degree in graphic design, but I didn't know anything about the industry, and I didn't know anyone. I didn't have any connections. When I moved to LA, I knew 3 people and none of them worked in the industry at that time. One was a cousin who I had never met before. And one was a high school friend who's an engineer. I mean, I had no connections at all. And for graphic designers who work in the art department, it's really 100% based on connections, especially before you're in a union, because once you're in a union, there is an availability list. You can sometimes get work through there. But other than that, I mean, it's 100% connections. And so I had to create my own connections from scratch. I had to cold contact people, 150 people, until one person was like, I'll help you. It took a lot of work to get to that one person. He helped me book my first TV show. And then ever since then, I've worked now on, I think, over 30 television shows and films. I do, in case you don't know what graphics are in the art department, I design graphics that are part of the set design and the props. So if a TV show or a movie is taking place inside a restaurant, I would design the menu and the signage outside the restaurant, and anything that would be designed by a graphic designer in real life is what I would do. And it's been really fun. I've got to work on some cool shows like Glee, and when I first moved out here, I did The Office and Entourage, and most recently Superstore, and I actually got to do Top Chef 2 recently, where I was actually on camera. They cut that part out, but my graphics made the cut. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, it's kind of a long story, but I'll tell you the short part. 4 or 5 years ago, I was sitting at Warner Brothers working on a show, and I had some downtime between some graphics. And I was, waiting for my next assignment. And I was watching Oprah interview Jack Canfield, who is one of my favorite authors. If you don't know him, he developed Chicken Soup for the Soul. And he has a book called The Success Principles, which was the first self-help book I ever read. And really, I think, helped me break into Hollywood. And as I watched him speak, I don't even remember what he said. I was literally sitting at my desk in this little bungalow at Warner Brothers watching Oprah talk to Jack Canfield, and my eyes just welled up with tears. And I had this like sudden like urge, or this voice just telling me, Erica, you're supposed to be helping people. Like, what are you doing? And I achieved my dream of designing graphics, and it's great. And I still do usually a pilot or two every year. So I'm still doing it a little bit, but I just felt this overwhelming sense of like, you need to be helping more people. Like, people need your help, and help people do what you did and break into Hollywood and achieve their dreams. And it was just so overwhelming for me. And, it just never went away. That whisper just never went away. And so I developed my coaching business, and since then, it's been really incredible. There's so many resources in the industry for actors, but I feel like not as much for the other crafts. And so, I love that I cover everybody in Hollywood. I think now I've worked with 11 or 12 different crafts in the industry. So, about 80% of my clients are usually actors, but I've worked with writers, directors. Obviously Brad is a cinematographer. I had a music supervisor, set PA, makeup artist. I've worked with, people in front of the camera, behind the camera. And it's really been incredible. Between myself and my clients, we've booked over 60 television shows and films on every major network. And it feels so good. And, I still love designing graphics, and I get to design stuff for my business every day, but it just doesn't compare anymore, to helping somebody, book a show or book a project or get an agent, or, like watching somebody else live their dreams is the greatest feeling in the world. I've cried many times when clients book things. So that's my story. I do a lot of mindset work in addition to strategy. So when I work with people one-on-one, we usually build a fresh new strategy for them of what they should be doing action-wise. And then we dive really deep into their belief system, their mindset, what's holding them back, why aren't they where they want to be yet, why aren't they doing the things they should be doing, all that kind of stuff. So
wonderful. And one of the things you say in your book is that a lot of this strategy is applicable for any creative person. And some of the people we have with us in the group are artists, musicians, writers, not necessarily film business people. Most of them are.
Awesome.
And so everybody, this is the book right here.
Yay.
Meant for this. And I just love the title because, really that's what we all want, that affirmation, don't we? We're putting ourselves on the line. And that's, we want to know that our intuition is correct. So what I'd like to do is we really want to explore some of Erica's coaching and some of her wonderful ideas and some of her wonderful strategies and tools. And so we'll use a little walkthrough of the book as the structure for that. And it's not going to be an exhaustive deep dive because that would be beside the point, but we're going to there's 20 chapters, and I've got bullet points up to chapter 10, which feels like a real cliffhanger. If you really want to know what comes next, and we'll see how time goes and how far we can get through those bullet points, but there's just so much wonderful content. One of the things I want to say about the book for everybody is I know Erica. I know her a little bit personally through Facebook. We've before the pandemic, she had some live events that I attended. And she's just, you can already tell she's just a very real person. I mean, she's somebody that you could just imagine sitting next to you, and you've known her all your life, and you're just very comfortable with her. And I want to say that comes across in the book. The book is written in a very conversational, casual, spontaneous style. You know, I think the book challenges you, but it's not in a confrontational way. It's like your friend, you know, is sitting there talking to you, giving you this amazing advice, and it's often clever and funny and cute, and you know, so many times I either laughed out loud or smiled. And the other thing I'll say about the book too,
Brad, I'm just going to take you with me wherever I go to talk about the book.
The other thing I'll say about the book is, as I was reading it, I would come to passages and I'm like, oh my God, this person needs to know that. And I would snap a photo of a paragraph and you know, serendipitously, and this is something Erica touches on in the book, it is sometimes these paragraphs that the day I read them, literally earlier that day, I had the same conversation with somebody. And here was this perfect little encapsulation of what they needed to know. So I am not particularly a faith-based or religious or even spiritual person, but it was a magical experience reading this book. And so if you do believe in those things, then, you know, there's something going on here. The other thing I wanted to say is that the book is fun. I mean, it's really fun. And Erica's coaching style is fun. One of the things that she talks about in here that we may get to is a scavenger hunt that she does with her clients. You know, so this is not drudgery. This is not like homework. It's like play, you know, and even the things that are confrontational to us or uncomfortable to us, you know, Erica really challenges us to have fun with it and to embrace the pursuit. And then the last thing I want to say before we dive in, Erica's got a line in this book which I just love, and to me it defines the book, and she says it's like taking an opportunity cake out of the oven. And that's exactly what this is. That is exactly what this book is. So let's dive in. One of the things that you touch upon and you come back to a lot in the book, Erica, is intuition. I mean, that's really a theme that goes throughout the book. Do you want to say anything briefly about that in general?
Yeah, sure. And in case, you know, I want to explain it in a way that's maybe more tangible for people that maybe are, I don't know, afraid of intuition or feel like that's too woo or something. But, and Brad, you may have heard me say this. So last year I read a book, actually, maybe it was 2019 now at this point. I read a book called The Third Door. I don't know if you guys read it, but I just loved it. I thought it was so good. And the whole book is this kid. He's like 20 something, 5 by the time the book was finished. I don't know. He's young. And he sets out to interview like the greats from all different categories of the world. So he wanted to interview Bill Gates for, you know, computers and science, and Lady Gaga for music, and Steven Spielberg for film. And he didn't know anybody. He didn't have these connections prior. So the whole book is, while it does have those interviews in the book, it's really about how he got the interviews, how he found these people. I don't know. It's fascinating. The audiobook is amazing. It's written like a cliffhanger kind of story, like you're just on the edge of your seat. But he talks about why he came up with the title, The Third Door. And he said that people would come up to him and say, now that you've interviewed all these incredible people, did you see anything they had in common? And he's like, yes. And he came up with this analogy that I love. It has stuck with me. He said, life is like a nightclub. There is the regular door that most people go through, where you're standing in a long line and you're waiting for a bouncer to let you in. Then there's a second door. That's the VIP entrance. You know, that's the celebrities and the billionaires and all those people that get to go in this easier door. For everybody else, there is a third door. And that is the people in that first line. They get out of line, they sneak around the back, they open the window and slither in through the window, or they go in through the kitchen door, or they find a way in the back. And the idea is that they find their own way in. They find their third door. And he said between Bill Gates and Steven Spielberg, all these people that he talked to essentially all found their own third door. And that is how they broke into their industry and succeeded in their industry. And that analogy just stuck with me so long. And I think it's so applicable to any artist with the dream. I think that there's no one way to do anything in Hollywood or in the arts. There's no one single path that works for everybody. There's maybe foundational strategic stuff that most people do, but everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own, cool connection or synchronistic opportunity. Everyone has their own third door. And to me, that is what our intuition is, and why I think our intuition is so important in pursuing a big dream. I think, pursuing a big dream is going to require more than just a foundational base strategy, these actions that everybody else is doing. It's going to require you to find your third door. And the way that we find that is through our intuition, where we're led. How, for example, at one of my last live events that Brad was at, I talked about how I was working on connecting with a certain celebrity. And I didn't know that anyone in the audience knew that celebrity. And Brad emailed me afterwards and was like, I know him. Do you want me to introduce you? And I was like, what? And that's not something that I could strategize or put in a book and say, here's the formula, do a live event and ask the audience if they know anyone can, it was just synchronistic. It was my intuition just led me to share that at this event. I had no expectations, and that led me, to a connection. So to me, that's what our intuition is about. It's about leading us to our own specific third door.
The other theme that is constant throughout the book, that I'd like you to speak about briefly before we kind of pick apart a few chapters, the concept that your success is inevitable. That's very important in this book. Mm-hmm. and in your coaching in general.
Got it on a t-shirt. Yeah, I think that, I was just talking to a client today about how important it is to believe in yourself. And I know that might sound cliche and cheesy or whatever, but when you are in it, when you are on your path to whatever you're trying to create for yourself, your belief in yourself and what is possible impacts everything. And you have to approach it from a standpoint of, I believe this is going to happen, period. I don't have time to entertain the idea that this isn't going to happen. I think when you're an artist and you have a dream, that's why I call this meant for this. When you have a dream, you feel like you're meant to do. Like you can't not try, you can't not pursue it. You have to tell yourself that it's going to happen, period. And that's why we say my success is inevitable. You have to believe it is inevitable, because if you don't, if you waver and you're like, I don't know if this is really going to happen, you don't take risks, you don't take the steps that you should be taking, you hold yourself back in so many ways, you self-sabotage. So that belief that I'm just believing that this is happening, hands down, 100%, period, really will impact everything that you do.
So I know we'll probably get into this as we dive through the chapters, but since I'm sure this question is on everybody's mind, I know for me personally, when I trip and I stumble and I have, moments of doubt and, my results are not affirming my feeling of inevitability, I think that's something we all hit at some point or another. How do you rebound from that? How do you re-engage, with that sense of inevitability?
So one of my quotes from the book is, you are the only one who can decide that you're meant for this. It's not up to fate, it's a decision. And I think that it's a decision you have to make over and over and over again. On the days where you feel totally defeated, on the days where you feel rejected. I mean, we can get into the rejection chapter. I don't know if you want to do that too, but when you're feeling the doubt, when you're feeling down, that's why the mindset work is so important. You have to be able to build yourself back up again to get to a place of, no, I believe this is going to happen. And, I talk about this in the book. Jack Canfield, my favorite author, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Have you heard of Chicken Soup for the Soul? Okay. It's like a $96 million industry. He sold half of it, I believe, for millions and millions of dollars. His first Chicken Soup for the Soul book was rejected 144 times trying to get it published. And the company that ended up publishing it was like a small publishing house in Florida. It wasn't like Simon and Schuster, you know? And I always think about that. I always come back to that. Like, he was rejected 144 times. I mean, Biden today, regardless of where you stand on the political party, he first ran for president 32 years ago. It took him 32 years to achieve his dream. And so I think that there's so many wonderful, you know, examples in this world, in history, of people who doubted themselves or failed or were rejected a million times, and it still worked out really well for them. You know, I talk about Lisa Kudrow. She was on Frasier before Friends, and she got fired. She was fired from Frasier. And, you know, she probably doubted herself a lot and, you know, the inevitability of her success, and then booked Friends. So I think it's about, you know, doing whatever you need to do. I have some examples in the book, but doing whatever you need to do to build yourself back up and reconnect to the fact that it doesn't matter if someone said no. It doesn't matter if I didn't book this project. I'm still going to succeed.
So there's three comments you make or points you bring up in chapters 2, 3, and 4, and I'm going to kind of bundle them together because I think they all touch on the same thing. In chapter 2, you address thinking like a successful person. And then in chapter 2, you do the 10 pillars, and pillar 3, which is one that really touched me, is obstacles or opportunities to pivot. And one of the quotes you make is that successful people are solution oriented rather than problem oriented. And then in chapter 4, you quote Jack Canfield saying, "Success leaves clues." Mm-hmm. So I'll let you pick up from there.
Yeah, I think that when you experience an obstacle, which you will, you will hit an obstacle, you will get rejected, something will not fall through, something will fall through. You know, we experience so many obstacles on this journey. And I always like to look at it as an opportunity to pivot. And this is like, you know, I say in the book, I'm a hopeless romantic about everything. Like, I'm a hopeless romantic about my dreams. I just believe. I just keep believing. Even on the days when I'm really struggling, there are days where I'm like crying. I'm on the floor. I think it's all over. I just feel terrible. But there's a part of me that still believes, and I still get back up the next day. And, you know, even, you know, for example, with the Lisa Kudrow thing, she got fired from Frasier, and that could be like such a horrible thing. That could be a bad obstacle or hard obstacle that maybe feels insurmountable. But then she was free to do Friends. And then it led to Friends. And I mean, her career blew up, you know, and she's financially set for life. So I think that every time we hit an obstacle, it's always an opportunity to pivot somewhere else. You know, it's like that something better is waiting for us, or sometimes the obstacle leads us. Like, for example, if Lisa Kudrow was not fired from Frasier, she might not have auditioned for Friends at all. Right. And so sometimes the obstacle leads us to an action that we wouldn't have taken if we didn't have that obstacle, and it leads to something better.
You have a comment in the book, an analogy about showing up at the dock and you've just missed the boat.
Yeah, that's my favorite Abraham Hicks quote ever. Yeah, Abraham says, people always think that they get to the dock and they've missed their boat, but there's always another boat coming.
Can you say a little bit about thinking like a successful person? What exactly, when you advise your clients, what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, I have 10 pillars that, you know, I believe are like the 10 pillars of thinking like a high achiever. But to sort of sum it up a little bit, I have this analogy that's in the book that I've been talking about with my clients this week. So I wanted to just bring it up here because I feel like it's a visual, it's easy to understand. The two pools analogy. So I think, you know, in the arts, in Hollywood, there are two pools of people. right? There's one pool where people are struggling. They're struggling financially. They're struggling with their dreams. They're struggling to get opportunities. They're not where they want to be yet. We'll call that pool most people. And then there's a second pool of people who are doing well, people who are making lots of money at their dream, people who have lots of fans and lots of jobs and lots of opportunities, making lots of money. And so that pool we'll call the high achiever pool, right? So they both exist. The most people pool is much bigger. There's way more people in this pool, right? I mean, if you're just looking at the data, it's like the percentage of people to succeed is always going to be much smaller than the people that don't succeed, right? So both of these pools exist. But just because the most people pool has way more people in it and is so much bigger doesn't mean that it should take any of your focus. Your focus should be on this high achiever pool, even though it's smaller. So an example I give with this is, especially in Hollywood with actors, there are a lot of people out there that put out content that talk about how hard it is and talk about, well, you have to be realistic, right? So what's realistic? What could you realistically achieve? They talk about how little money you take home after you pay your agent and your manager and taxes, and they talk about the reality and the realisticness of it, right? To me, the reality they are talking about is the most people pool reality. It's the reality of most people. But if you go to someone like Lisa Kudrow, for example, if we keep talking about her, she's making a shit ton of money, every day before she even wakes up. And so her reality looks different than this, the people's reality in the most people pool. Just because these people are louder and stronger and say, but be realistic, this is our reality, it doesn't mean another reality doesn't exist, right? This reality still does exist of people making money and doing really well. So when I say, think like a high achiever, for me, it's like, you need to stop listening to the bullshit about the limiting beliefs and all this stuff about most people, the way they do things, the way they talk, the way they believe, right? You need to focus on these high achievers. What do they believe in? How are they talking about their career and opportunities and possibility? What kind of actions are they taking? Because I can tell you, it looks very different from the people in this most people pool.
I think that's a really lovely segue to something you talk about in chapter 5. And I'll preface it by saying one of the reasons I really value your advice, I've been around the block enough times in this business and in life that I've listened to a lot of people give advice. And to quote or to paraphrase Mark Twain, a lot of times it just ain't so. But the things you say always ring true with my experiences. And one of those is your analogy about you being the average of the 5 friends you spend the most time with. I think that's something that's really important. And I think that's something that you should touch on.
Yeah, especially for artists. I mean, it's a Jim Rohn quote. Jim Rohn says that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And you can look at this in so many different ways. I mean, in the business world, the entrepreneur world, they do it with money. They say, look at the income of your 5 closest friends, the people you talk to and hang out with the most. You probably have similar incomes, whatever the average is. If you add up all your incomes of the 5 people, divide by 5, that's the average income, right? But I think that there's so many other ways in which there are averages between the people that we hang out with. It's, I say in the book, like, are all of your closest 5 friends, are you Target people or Chanel people? Are you Costco people or Whole Foods people? Like, we have so much in common. You probably eat similarly. You probably have a similar workout routine. You probably, do similar hobbies, and of course we hang out with people, we have stuff in common. But the thing is, we also then have in common the thoughts and the beliefs, right? And so you might be hanging out, like I have 2 groups of friends. One group of friends I feel very comfortable with, pretty supported. And I can be my old self with those group of friends. Like if I don't want to take risks that day, or if I'm like tired of everything, I can go to them and be that person with them and say, I'm going to be lazy today, whatever. Then I have another group of friends that doesn't really stand for that, like that I can only really be my best self with. Like if I'm having a low day or whatever, they'll say, cool, let's talk about raising you up. How can we raise your vibe? What, how can I encourage you again? How can we get you back there? It's just so different, the conversations. And so if you're wanting to succeed at something really big, take a look at the people around you and, your closest friends circle that you talk to and hang out with the most. Are any of them doing what you want to do? Are any of them doing it on the level that you want to do it? And it's not about like, oh, you need to go break up with all your friends now. It's just about, okay, if I have desires to be, this is going to sound bad, but like more successful than, where my friends are now, or if I want bigger things and that's not around me, I think I need to make it a priority to start seeking out people that do, even if it's people that are that successful that I can't contact, but maybe I can watch interviews of them, or I can read their books, or, I can listen to them talk on a podcast. How can I surround myself with people at that level if I'm not getting it from my 5 people?
Yeah, when this first dawned on me, I was in my 20s and I was playing music. And it dawned on me when I realized I needed to be around musicians who were better than I was, because that made me want and need to be a better musician. And the same thing applies as a filmmaker. If you're with people who are on your level or, heaven forbid, below your level, I mean, you're going to slack, you're going to phone it in. Good enough is going to be good enough. But if you're with people who intimidate you and inspire you, it's gonna call upon you to be a better filmmaker or artist. And I've met people in the world who want to be the smartest person in the room, and I think that's detrimental. I think you need to be with people who not only encourage you and challenge you to level up, but you can also like what you say in the book, you can ask them advice. Somebody who makes $50,000 a year, that could be a fine salary, but that person isn't going to know how to tell you how to make $1 million, if that's your goal.
Right.
So, depending on whatever your goal is, you should be with the people who not only inspire you, but have the knowledge and the experience, to advise you. So I thought that was such a super important thing to touch on. And you have this Joe Dispenza quote that it says, our personal reality is created by our personality. And in order to change that reality, you change your personality. And that plays into kind of a mantra that's been going on in my head for about a year. And that's, if you want something you've never had before, you have to do something you've never done before. Mm-hmm. And I find that manifests in unexpected ways. And I don't want to, sidetrack the conversation with my experiences with that. But would you like to touch on that real quick?
Yeah, I love this from Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about it from a scientific standpoint, which to me is just fascinating. He says, our personality is made up by, or our personal reality, meaning like the reality around us is existing because of who we are. Your personality is going to create your personal reality. Like being super simple, if you believe in yourself, you're probably going to see opportunities all around you. If you don't believe in yourself, you're going to feel like there are no opportunities anywhere ever, right? So your reality is literally changing based on your thoughts and your beliefs and everything. So it's about, if you want to see a different reality around you. Is somebody's noise thing on? Do you hear that?
Let me check.
It looks like everyone's muted. Is it from a ghost?
Wait, here's one that's not muted.
Oh.
There we go.
Okay. I was like, is it a ghost? So, he talks about, if you want your reality change, you have to change your personal, your personality. You just have to change things about yourself in order to start seeing the world around you differently.
So another concept, and this is something that I've certainly been guilty of myself in chapter 6, show me the money. You're talking about people, in the starving artist mentality, and you know, who just become stuck in that mental conversation that they're broke, you know, instead of investing in their career. And you know, there's a little bit of a, I think there's a little bit of mysticism in people's minds about the film industry. They don't look at it like the corporate world. You know, in the corporate world, it's just a given that it takes money to make money. If you don't invest, you know, you're not going to grow your business. But somehow, you know, we think of our, you know, creative work as capital, but that's not the business. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, how many people have heard the term starving artist? It's like, you know, you would never hear, you never hear the word artist without the word starving attached to it. And I think it becomes an identity. And when you take it on as your identity, whether it's because you believe it or you've heard it so many times from other people, it inhibits you, it blocks you from investing in yourself and investing in your career. You know, let's say you are an editor, you know, like a sound editor. Like right now I'm recording my audiobook and editing it myself. I had to, you know, I had to get a pop screen. I just got some better headphones. You know, I need to have a decent microphone. I mean, I'm still using GarageBand, but if I were to do this professionally, you know, I'd be getting, you know, the professional software, and I'd probably be getting a better microphone than the Blue Yeti. Like, even, you know, equipment is not the only thing, but just as an example, your craft or your career is a business. You know, you can do it as a hobby and not have to invest much into it. And then it's a hobby. But if you want to make money from it, you have to be able to put money into it. You have to see it as a business. And you'll never see it as a business if you identify as a starving artist. If you take on that identity that you're always broke, that you're never going to make enough money, that you're always struggling, you don't even see ways in which you could invest in yourself. You know, you don't even see like things could pop up. Like, this is totally different, but I don't know why it popped in my head. But when I was working on my book, I was really struggling to come up with a title. And I was like, man, like, I don't know how to come up with a title. I'm brainstorming and I have a list and I don't really love everything. And Meant for This was on there, but it wasn't sticking out for me yet. And coming up with subtitles. And then the next day, a friend of mine posted on Facebook, I'm teaching how to title nonfiction books in a free workshop tomorrow. Anybody want to come? And I was like, yes. Oh my God. You know, if I wasn't open to help, if I wasn't open to it, I would have never even seen his post. Or even if I saw it, I wouldn't have said, yes, please sign me up. You know, it's like when you keep your identity as starving artist and you really attach that to who you are, it blocks you from seeing how you can even invest in, you know, how money can come to you or how you can create opportunities to financially invest.
Yeah, I was going to comment on that because, you know, a lot of us, and I know I'm guilty of this too, of somebody saying, well, you should invest more or you should be saving more. And they were like, well, you know, if I had more money, I would do that. But, you know, in this day and age, you know, there's things like the gig economy. You could Uber, you could Instacart. If you're somebody who can't hold a job, but you're creative, you know, there's GoFundMe, there's Patreon, you know, all of those ways that you can get people to, you know, pay in exchange for your creativity. And, you know, we live in the age of the internet. If you don't understand how those things work, you go to Google and you find out how they work. So there's a lot of resources, I think. And I think it really kind of comes down to that old saying, you know, where there's a will, there's a way. You know, and
totally. I mean, like, you know, and I always tell my clients this, even though it's different because it's, you know, it's not in the arts, but if you think about this, for the very first Starbucks, you know, when the very first Starbucks was created, they needed a location, they needed coffee beans, they needed equipment, they needed, employees. They needed these things, the bare minimum, just to get the business off the ground, like just to get it started. And, you can't get all those things for free, right? And so, okay, so maybe they would get a business loan or, things like that. It's like, you can do that too. You can get a business loan, right? It's like, you have to look at your career like you're creating a Starbucks. It is a business. Yeah, and now I forget what else I was going to say, but I think that's okay.
In chapter 7, you've got, there's 3 things I want to touch on. And I'm going to bundle 2 of them together. For the third thing, I'm going to need a volunteer. So you guys think about who wants to volunteer. And if nobody volunteers, I'm just going to pick somebody. And there's no hiding from Zoom. So the 2 things that I think kind of bundle together is, one thing you say is everything you want is on the other side of your comfort zone. And then you also talk about people getting comfortable with their pain. Mm-hmm. So that's something that, I think a lot of us would like to hear about.
To me, this is like, can I curse on here?
Sure.
Okay. I'm like, to me, this is such a mind fuck. And because I notice this with myself sometimes, is that even if we want something really, really badly, we could still self-sabotage because we're actually comfortable not having it. And it's like, I know that sounds crazy. That's why I think it's such a mind fuck, but you get so comfortable. You get so used to not having it. You've not had it for a while. You've been living your life. It sucks because you don't have the thing you want, but you don't have it and you've lived fine, and then you get used to it. And so you actually get comfortable not having the thing, even if you still really want it. That that comfortable bubble of not having it can keep you exactly where you are. So sometimes when you haven't had something for a long time, it's almost like a double-edged sword, because it creates that, that comfort in getting used to something. Tony Robbins, they say, like, we don't take action until the pain becomes too great. And it's dangerous when you haven't had something for a while, because sometimes you just get numb to the pain and you're just so used to it that, like, you never get to a point where the pain becomes too great, because you're just used to it and you're kind of numb to the pain and whatever. And so I feel like in those cases, you have to connect back to why you really want this to help you get out of that. Tony Robbins says that we are motivated by pain or by pleasure. So if you're numb from the pain and the pain is not motivating you anymore, then really reactivate that pleasure, reactivate, like, why do you want it? How much do you want it? What do you think you're going to get from it? How do you think you're going to feel from it, to help get you out of that comfort zone?
And just, you want to say a little bit about how everything you want is on the other side of that?
Yeah. I mean, I know it's so cliche. I'm like, I feel like you see that on Instagram quote all the time. Everything you want is on the other side of your comfort zone, but I think that, it's cliche, but it's true. Everything that you desire is on the other side of risk. Like, you cannot succeed at a big dream without taking risks. And, it's interesting. I know you guys don't live here, but a lot of people who decide to move to LA, that's a big risk, to move across the country or wherever they came from and to pick up and move to LA. And sometimes people think, well, I already took the big risk. I moved here. And then they just stop taking risks because they feel like they already did the big risk. Like, oh, I got to do it again. That's so scary. But you have to, you need to be taking risks every day. You need to put yourself out there. You need to cold contact people. You need to play your music for people. You have to put yourself out there all the time. You're never going to move forward or get these big things if you're not taking risks consistently.
So, who wants to volunteer to do one of Erica's trainings? Oh, okay, Lindsay raised her hand. Nice, we got a volunteer.
Yay!
This is called the 7 Whys, and it's really fun and it's really cool. I'm asking you to unmute. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Lindsay and Erica.
Okay, Lindsay, hi.
Hi.
So tell me something that you have been putting off, that you've been procrastinating for your career, for your dreams.
Oh wait, I have a giant list.
Well, just pick one. We'll start with one.
Yeah, I guess getting some additional training and stuff like that. Having to go out and purchase that. So is that something you can work with? I'm probably not the best person.
No. Of course, I can definitely work with it, but I think that's a cop out. Like getting more training, that's easy. Cause Like, I mean, we can talk about that too, but is there anything scarier than getting training that you've been procrastinating?
Yeah, I guess, let me think. I have to unpack this giant bundle of things I've been procrastinating on because it all kind of plays into each other. I guess moving somewhere where there is more work would be a
Okay.
big one.
Okay, cool. And by the way, like this is a safe space. We love you. We support you. Okay. I want you to feel okay sharing. Okay. So why have you not moved to a place where there's more work?
Because right now there's not a lot of work to be had, I feel like, and I'm worried about cash flow. Just starting out in a new place.
Okay. Why are you worried about cash flow?
Because I don't have a lot of savings. And so it's going to go fast if I really have to try and sit on it.
Okay. Why don't you have savings?
Because honestly, I've just not saved enough, not done enough side jobs, not enough, work putting into adding to it.
Okay. Why haven't you made more money to put into it?
Part of it is availability of work. Part of it is having to step out and actually find different avenues to get work in.
Okay. Why haven't you looked into different avenues for creating more cash flow? Can you mute that new person, Brad?
Because it's hard. It's intimidating. I kind of do two different industries, and so trying to figure out which one's going to prioritize. Wanting to do one and knowing the other one's going to be what actually makes money for right now. But it's a juggling act between getting more work in that could maybe move what I want to be doing forward and getting more work in that would pay more, just straight hourly.
Okay. Why haven't you decided between those two different avenues?
Because it kind of feeds into each other. It's I need more savings to potentially move, which would, and in moving, if I can keep up, the more lucrative work, then I could potentially try and skate by on that, even like part-time, much better than I could on the work that I want to do. On the other hand, if I don't get more work, if I don't progress in the work I actually want to do, then it's going to be harder and harder to move to a new place and actually get those jobs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Why wouldn't you progress in the work you actually want to do?
It's both having, a network and having a body of work that you can kind of like, it's always good to have a body of work that you can point at and go like, look at all the stuff I've done.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you don't, you kind of need, ideally you have both, right? But you need one or the other. You either need to know people, you either have people who know you, or you have something that you can bring to the table and be like, look at my cool stuff, and then, take a risk on me. And it's when you don't have either one of those things, then it's much more difficult.
Why don't you have cool stuff to show people?
Probably at least part of it's procrastination.
No.
And part of it's just...
Tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
No, it's not procrastination. Tell me why you don't have stuff to show people.
It's just I mean, part of it probably is, it's just trying to work and get things done, and at some point everything's so piled up that it's easier just to put it off.
And so why are you putting it off?
Because I have a to-do list with 50 things on it.
Yeah.
And at some point it's just easier not to get started on any of the 50 things.
Okay, so we went way past 7. We're on 10 now, and I'm just because I know we're going deep, but this is really interesting. So if you hear, thank you so much, by the way, Lindsay, for participating. You did a fantastic job. If you can hear what she's doing, and it's important to hear it because you probably all do the same thing in your own way. Okay, we all do. She's dancing around the real reason, right? And she's just going back and forth. It's like, this is what our minds do. It creates an excuse, a tangible excuse of why we're not doing something to cover up the deeper excuse, right? So let me ask you a question, Lindsay. If you believed in yourself like a motherfucker and you were like, I am so talented, I am so amazing, I know I can create such badass work, and I know that my success is inevitable, do you think you would put off creating the work to show the people, to get the job, to make the money, to move to the city?
No, I wouldn't put it off.
So this 7 whys exercise is asking why 7 times. We're just trying to get to the deeper answer, right? Because the first question is, why are you procrastinating? And the thing is, when you're procrastinating, especially something related to a big dream of yours, it's never that I'm just procrastinating. Procrastination is resistance. And so it's always about, well, what are you resisting? There's a reason you're procrastinating. There's a reason you're putting it off. And the reason is you're resisting something, right? Something deeper is telling you, something, for example, like, you're not good enough. Lindsay, this would never happen if you put all that work in. So you may as well not do it. And let's come up with a lot of excuses why you can't do it. And let's just keep you here in this city. Right.
Yeah.
That's how our mind works. And it stops us. It self-sabotages us. It stops us from, see, and tell me if anyone can relate, if they've self-sabotaged, if they're doing this in any kind of way. I know I have. I think this is a really common thing where our mind comes up with these other reasons about why we are procrastinating, why we're not where we are, why we're not doing what we need to do. Does that make sense, Lindsay?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
If I could toss a thought in as well, just from my own experience and something that I like to advise my mentees is just remember, Lindsay, nobody starts at the top. Everybody starts at square one. Everybody, Spielberg, Shonda Rhimes, we all started exactly where you are, and where you are is exactly okay and perfect. And you can go from there to wherever you want to be, and don't let that present state intimidate you, because, and this is where, so much of Erica's coaching is important, because it gives you access, to the concept of thinking that your success is inevitable. And even I personally am detached from that at the moment. I wish I could say I'm not, but I have to be honest with you. I have some conflicts with that right now. But I think, we're all a work in process. And that's where somebody like Erica and her book are valuable, because they provide us, that external perspective and motivation.
I was going to say, do you mind if I share, Brad, about some of your past fears?
Yeah, no, please go ahead.
Okay. Because look, we all have this conversation, all of us. It looks different for each person. And so Brad, when we were working together a long time ago now, I don't know, it was a year or two ago, Brad said, I've been in this industry for a while. I've done some pretty good work. I would love to do more work, but I'm somewhat shy, and I'm not that great at making connections, and I need to make more connections, and I need to find ways to be able to do that because I feel uncomfortable doing that. And so that was what his mind was telling him. Now, if you've been paying attention to what Brad has been doing recently, so not only did, he have all that success with the Christmas film, but he hired a publicist. Okay. He hired a publicist that I'm guessing also forced you to post the shit out of that movie and send it to people and connect with people, right? Like, that was a scary thing. That was a big risk. It was a financial investment for you to do that. So even though you had those fears before, you didn't let them stop you from trying something, you know, taking a risk, hiring this publicist, that then having to put yourself out there all the time about this feature. And so just wanted to give an example of how, you know.
Well, you know, I'll make myself vulnerable and share something that none of you know. And I kind of alluded it to you, Eric. I told you I was going to send you a note about it, but I never did. When the movie was blowing up, A California Christmas, for those of you who don't know, the Christmas movie I shot last year, unexpectedly and delightfully shot to #1 on Netflix in the US and the world. And it stayed there for like 4 days in the US and 8 days in the world. And then it dominated the 2 weeks leading up to and including Christmas for both categories. The movie was #13 on Netflix for all genres for the entire year of 2020. And it was only in release for 2 weeks. Now, a lot of people, you know, I was getting a lot of attaboys and pats on the back and people congratulating me. And it was really uncomfortable, and it became insanely uncomfortable. And I couldn't figure out why. And part of it is because I have self-esteem issues. And I was thinking, you know, this is too much praise. And that's what I was thinking it was. But when I went on a shoot in Arizona last week, and somebody was asking me about it, and I got really emotional, and I had a revelation. And what that is if you guys know anything about my history, I've had some nice highlights. I shot Britney Spears' Toxic video, and it was very celebrated, and people know that to this day. I won an MTV VMA Moon Man for a Moby video. I shot Second Unit for 70 days on a Warner Brothers action movie called Torque. And I've had other highlights, you know, and you know some of them. But for whatever reason, none of them have ever shifted into the gear and had the momentum that I wished and dreamed they would. And I've had this whole conversation in Arizona came about because this fellow, the director I was with, was talking about how he had done some music videos that never got released. And I said, oh my God, yes, I've done some videos. And we both were saying, you know, we thought this was going to change everything, you know, and I've done a couple of features that never got released. And it's not because they sucked. It's because, you know, the label wanted to go in a different direction, or there were legal issues. I mean, it was out of our hands. And but what this has culminated in is that I've had so many moments where I thought were tipping points, and I have been disappointed over and over and over again. Now, I've stayed in it, and I've been punching, and I've been fighting, and I've never quit. I've never stopped. But I am so vulnerable now to that disappointment. It's so damaging to me that I can't believe that the success of California Christmas is going to make a difference. I hope it does. But if I allow myself to get attached to it and have that disappointment one more time, I just don't think I can stand it. So that's a horrible thing for me to say. And the only reason I say it is I just don't want anybody else to feel like, you know, you get to a point in your career like me and everything is all great and perfect. I mean, I think, you know, it's just important for me to be honest about that.
Well, and I think that one thing that might be helpful for you, Brad, this is what I would say to one of my clients, is to change in your mind what success means. Because you should be allowing yourself to celebrate the shit out of one of your features getting to #1 at Netflix without it having to lead anywhere else, without you booking a single job ever again.
And I kind of did, but it was other people projecting that expectation on me that became overwhelming.
Yeah, but that's a story that then you're taking on because they're saying it, and you have to reject that story in your mind, and you have to be able to appreciate and celebrate the success. You know, like I'm going to have a launch party for my book, a virtual launch. I decided today on Tuesday, and like, look, my book was not picked up yet by a publisher. You know, I basically self-published it through a printing company. And I'm like, you know what? I'm throwing myself a launch party because it's a big deal. I wrote this book and it's doing really well, you know, and I want to celebrate this. I don't know if it'll ever lead to a book deal. I don't know if it'll lead to a book deal for a second book. I don't know where it'll lead. But in this moment, I need to celebrate what I have done. And here's a little fact. The more you celebrate, the more you create the energy for more success to come.
So let's segue back to your book, because there's still some really wonderful things I'd like to touch on. You talk about that moment of epiphany when you realized you wanted to write the book. And it's a nice story. And the significant piece that I want to take from it to share with everybody, because I've had this thought, I've had this moment, and I think most of us had. You were in that situation and your mind said, I want that.
Yes.
And it was just a transcendent experience. And can you talk about that, both your experience, but then also like with your clients and other people, that moment? And can you guys raise hands? Has anybody else ever had that moment of decisive, I want that?
Just like seeing somebody else have it, or seeing somebody,
Yeah.
Yeah. Last year, or not last, I keep thinking last year, the pandemic was last year, huh? I guess the year before, 2019, I was really struggling in terms of like, what do I do next? My coaching business had done pretty well. I was helping a lot of people, but it wasn't feeling complete, or it wasn't feeling like, I felt like I just didn't want to sell online courses forever. Like, I feel like, I don't know. It just, something was feeling like, I don't know what's next. I need to do something else, not something else like another business, something else within my business. But is it coaching? I just didn't know what it was. I didn't know what my next steps were. And I spent basically the entire year, because I'm very type A, hardcore, have to take action, trying to force whatever that next thing was for me. I hired coaches. I, took courses. Like I tried so many different things. I'm like, maybe this is it. Maybe this is it. Maybe it's a mastermind. Maybe I do this. And I really needed the solution. I like needed the answer. And it didn't come, and that was really, a challenging experience for me, because I like to take action. And if I don't know what I'm taking action on and I feel stuck, it's really challenging for me. So I cried a lot. I had a very hard year. And then my friend asked me if I wanted to go volunteer at Gabby Bernstein's book launch event. And I had only read one of her books, so I didn't really know Gabby Bernstein that well. I read one book. I really liked the one book I read, but I felt like I don't know much. But she was like, it's fine. I volunteered before. It'll be fun. So I was like, okay. So I went, and it was at a theater. It's this beautiful theater in LA. And when Gabby walked in, I saw her walk in, and she was going to the green room to get ready. And we were in the lobby of this theater, and I just saw her walk in, and something inside me was just like, I want that. And I didn't really like, what does that mean? She just walked in. She didn't do anything yet. Like, I want what? Like, I want to walk into a lobby. I don't understand. So I didn't know what it meant, but I just felt it like, oh my gosh, I want that. And then as the night went on, my friend and I were in charge of setting up just a little table on the stage. It had flowers, it had her book, maybe some water. And so we were in charge of setting up that table. So we were on the stage setting up the table before anybody was at the theater. And, I also grew up acting and being on stage. And so I hadn't stood on a stage like that in so long. And again, I just felt this feeling like, oh my God, this is just awesome. Like, I want this. And then it wasn't until I saw Gabby actually start the event and stand on stage and talk about her book, almost like what we're doing now, just sharing ideas that hopefully will impact people's lives. There were celebrities in the audience, people, in Hollywood. I was just like, oh my gosh, like I want to do that. How cool. I want that. And that answer didn't come to me from searching or from hardcore trying to figure it out. It was just something that I just received in that moment, and that made a huge difference for me. And that was like, okay, like I've had this idea to do the second book. I need to write this book. I need to write a book. And that became my next thing, but it didn't become my next thing because I strategized. I wasn't like, oh, coaches have books. You should write a book for your next thing. It wasn't like that. It was, I just had a feeling. I just had a moment. And so, and I think as artists too, that it's so important for us sometimes to like feel into what our next thing is instead of trying to strategize the shit out of it. And, just like allow for some divine inspiration, allow for that artistic inspiration, instead of just trying to, force whatever your next step is.
Yeah. One of the things that you talk about in chapter 8 is another one of those moments of deja vu for me. When I came to LA in 1990, and in the early 90s, when I was trying to establish myself, a lot of the things, that we've talked about, getting an agent, being successful, doing movies, things that, now are on my resume, they were the elephant. And the story about how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time. And so what dawned on me was that I needed, it was just overwhelming, but I needed to, what you talk about is reverse engineer that success and break it into those manageable pieces. And the other thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to hold myself accountable every day. I wanted to say, what did I do today that was in integrity with my commitment? What can I demonstrate that I did that put me one step closer? So I would break those down into tasks of, what would be achieved, what would be the monthly milestones, and then I would break them down into days. So every day, I had a to-do list, and again, to use another one of your quotes, create your own yellow brick road. Every day I had, one yellow brick or two yellow bricks that I committed myself to laying. And I might not have been perfect. Maybe one day I wouldn't do it, but maybe the next day I would do 3 bricks.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't beat myself up, but I was committed to the long game. And so that was my experience, but I'd love to hear you speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I talk about reverse engineering, whatever it is that you desire to achieve. So whatever your big goal is, and going backwards and figuring out, okay, well, if I won an Oscar, what would have to happen? And going down the list, what would have to happen for that? What would have to happen for that? And reverse engineering. And for me, the reverse engineer is the foundational strategy, the base strategy. And then the layer on top, like the icing on top of the cake, or like a layer, I was like the layer cake, the icing in between the layers is the inspired piece, so I call it inspired strategy. And it's the inspired ideas you get, like to write a book, that aren't necessarily in a foundational strategy, but it's just something that you feel led to do. And so, yeah, I mean, that's, what I work with my clients on, creating a strategy. And in terms of, what you're talking about, Brad, creating a plan for yourself, doing a little bit every day. I mean, that's so great. I think everyone has to find their own version of what works for them for that. And for me, that's changed over the years. Like sometimes I just give myself a goal for the week and I say, okay, by the end of the week, I want to have this done. And sometimes I do it daily, I change all the time. But I think it is important, like what Brad was saying, one thing that you can point out that Brad did is that he made it a priority. And so he scheduled it, right? So if it's like you have to make your dream a priority and put it in your calendar. Like this call, you probably put it in your calendar, reminding yourself to attend. It's like the actions you need to take, the way you need to show up for yourself, the way you need to show up for your dream. You have to make it a priority the way that Brad did. You have to, schedule it, figure it out how you're going to schedule it and make sure you show up because as Lindsay shared, and I feel like it's so common with most artists, it's very easy to not do it. Like it's so easy to have like a million things on your to-do list and just get distracted by so many other things and say, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. And then it keeps getting pushed off. I always say, instead of trying to fit your dream into your life, you should fit your life around your dream.
Yep. And I think there's 2 principles that are kind of underlying this conversation. One of those is accountability. And I think that this circles back to what we were saying about the 5 people in your life. Are those 5 people who are going to help hold you accountable? Or are those 5 people who are going to say, no, let's all just go party tonight. You could do that tomorrow. And
yeah, I think too, accountability, I always tell my clients, like, I don't want to necessarily hold you accountable for like homework that you have to get done. I mean, yes, I do a little bit of that in helping people, but it's not so much about accountability of doing certain tasks, but accountability for the big dream you say you want, right? It's like if Lindsay, you know, as my client, be like, Lindsay, you told me you have this dream in your heart and I'm holding it for you. I'm holding this space. I believe you can have it. I want you to have it. And so I have to hold you accountable to this dream that you said you want is in your heart. I gotta say, Lindsay, let's figure this out. Let's look at your to-do list. Let's get some new beliefs in you. Let's, you know, get you excited again about your dream, because I want to hold you accountable to what you said you want. You know, it's different than necessarily like just holding you accountable for certain tasks.
One of the things that I like to think about too is, you know, when you're talking about with Lindsay, for instance, is when you look at your calendar, when you look at your to-do list, when you look at your days, is that consistent with your expectations for a person who says they want the things that you want?
Mm-hmm. So good.
Because I think we can all be guilty of that, you know, where you look at the calendar or you look at the past month and you're like, you know, that does not look like the person who is committed to the thing I say I'm committed to. I meet those people all the time, you know, that they say they want ABC, and then I look at them and I just don't see that reflected in their actions or in their priorities. And it's like, maybe they don't even really want that.
Or they don't believe they can have it. They don't believe it's possible. They don't believe they're good enough, right? Like that's why the mindset work is so important, because when you're self-sabotaging, it's always because one of those things. You don't believe in yourself. You don't think you're good enough. You don't think you're worthy. You deserve it, etc.
This is a perfect segue into the bullet point I have for chapter 9, which is soft actions versus hard actions.
Yeah, I feel like people, this is like the one thing that people love the most because it's a little more tangible. And by the way, I hope this is helpful for you guys. I feel like we're shoving my book down your throat, but I hope it's actually helping you. So the hard actions versus the soft actions. So I had this epiphany one day when I moved to LA, I've always struggled with acne, and I was really struggling when I moved to LA because the water is different, you know, and the air is different, the water is different. And so I decided to see a facialist, and I found this woman on Yelp, and she was this Russian woman. She does it out of her home in Hollywood. And I went and I had the facial done, whatever she did. And at the end, she said, what are you using to fight the acne? You know, what are you using to wash your face to fight the acne? And I was like, oh, I use a soap. It's called Cetaphil. It says right there on the thing that it's gentle cleanser. And so I know that it's okay for sensitive skin. And she's like, cool, but what are you doing to fight the acne? And I was like, oh my gosh, light bulb went off. And now I put this story on every client for the next 10 years. I was doing what I call a soft action. Is it good to use a gentle cleanser? Sure. It's not going to hurt you. It'll clean your face. It's not going to actually fight the acne. It's just a gentle cleanser. It's still good, but it's not actually going to get you the result. Right. And so I needed, like now I use a Neutrogena acne fighting cleanser, you know, like I use a cleanser that's actually meant to fight acne. And so that's why I came up with this idea of soft actions versus hard actions. Soft actions are the actions that we do that lead indirectly to a result. Kind of like when I was giving Lindsay shit about signing up for her craft, you know, training more or whatever, right? Like anything you're going to do to work on your craft, that's a soft action. It's good. You should be doing it anyway, but it's a thing that'll lead indirectly to, you know, your career taking off. It's going to help, but it's not going to be the thing that leads to the result. So that's a soft action. Those are indirect results. Hard actions are the things that could lead directly to a result, like an audition, a meeting, an interview, a concert, you know, performing somewhere, something that could actually lead to a result. Hard actions are usually a risk of some sort, putting yourself out there in some way, moving to another city or whatever, you know. And most people, if they take a look at their actions, people that aren't where they want to be yet, they're usually like 90% soft actions, 10% hard actions. And some of them aren't doing any hard actions. They're only doing soft actions. They're going to class. You know, I always say too, like if you have a day job, which a lot of people in Hollywood have a day job. If you have a day job, that means that you probably only have like a couple hours a day, maybe even only a couple hours per week to work on your dream. If you only have like, I say this to actors sometimes because acting class is very time consuming. So like if you have a day job and then you're spending 4 hours in acting class and then you have acting class homework where you have to like meet with your partner and stuff like that out, you know, outside of it and get your homework done, that means that you don't really have any hours left to actually do anything to move your career forward. You might be a great actor by the time you're done the class, but who are you performing for? You know, your friends in your living room? So you really want to take a look at like, am I incorporating hard actions? Again, the soft actions are good and you should be doing them, but you want to make sure that most of your focus is on the hard actions that are actually going to lead to a result.
So if anybody has a question, you know, please put it in chat and I'll either work it into the conversation or, you know, let you ask it directly depending on what that is. So in chapter 10, you talk about knocking on doors. And, you know, again, I have a lot of people come to me and they say, you know, how do you get an agent? How do you get a feature film? And it's like they're expecting a formula or a fixed roadmap. And one of the things you say is that, you know, there is no one way. And that's, I tell people with mentors, get more than one. You don't want just one example. You want some variety because your experience won't be like any one of them, but, you know, hopefully a little bit here and a little bit there. But you want to talk a little bit about those doors and the question of, you know, how many calls should I make? How many emails should I send? You know, when's enough that I could stop or you know, change direction?
Yeah. Yeah. You stop when you get what you want. And only then. I do explain like the difference between avenues and doors, which, you know, I just look at as differently. But like in terms of like knocking on a door, like if, you know, like I would say like I cold emailed about 150 people when I was trying to break into Hollywood. I would have emailed 300 people if that's what it took. You know, I think there's never a number. There's no number of like when you should stop those kinds of things, like knocking on you know, we call it knocking on doors because, you know, people used to actually knock on doors for sales before internet and before phones. People were literally knocking on doors. And so when you think about like what actual door are you knocking on, you never stop until you get an answer, until you get your next step, or until a door opens. In terms of like, I call avenues like paths or strategies, essentially. Those I think that you can stop and shift your focus. So I give this example about, you know, writing in Hollywood. You know, to be a writer, to be a paid writer in Hollywood, there's like 11 different ways that you could make that happen. And so if you try one way for like a year and you're not getting anywhere, then I would switch avenues, right? So then to me, it's about like a path that you're following and a strategy you're trying. You know, for example, you know, you could try to get a writer's assistant job or a writer's PA job on a TV show or a movie. And so maybe you try that for a year and nothing's happening and it's just not the right timing and you haven't gotten that. It's like, okay, well, you could try that for the next 5 years and just that, or you could add to your repertoire. Let me look at getting representation. Let me look at putting my script on the blacklist. Let me look at festival. You know, there's so many different avenues. And so in that sense, if something isn't working for like 6 months to a year, I would shift gears and just try another path. And you can always come back to it. Because I do see people like get stuck on one path because then they just get comfortable on the one path and they're like, well, this is a thing I'm used to doing and I'm comfortable. I'll keep doing it. And then when it doesn't work, they're like, see, everyone was right. I'm never going to make it. It's too hard to make it in this town, you know, when really it's like, well, have you tried anything else?
Yeah. Well, one experience I had evolving my strategy is, you know, back in the days when demo reels were on VHS tapes, I would sit with people and I would watch them watch my tape.
Wow.
Notice where they would fast forward, you know? and then, you know, they would watch the tape, and at the end, you know, they might make a comment like, you know, boy, that actor was really bad. And I'm thinking, you know, wait a minute, I'm the DP. I just lit it, you know. But I realized that it doesn't matter how good it looks. That's a liability. You know, that's going to detract from my work. You know, don't put, you know, it may be a beautiful long dolly shot, but they're going to get bored. They don't want to see that shit. So it was a learning curve where I learned, it made me much better at cutting montages. And really, I kind of sum it up by telling people, make sure it would keep a 3-year-old entertained. Make it fast and make it quick, and don't repeat shots, and keep it interesting. So that was, I think that's an example of what you're talking about in terms of keep knocking but refine.
Right. Yeah, I talk about that a lot. It's like if you were cold emailing 300 people, you keep going, but you refine your pitch along the way, right? Maybe you get some feedback, and so you change it, and that kind of thing. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So we got a couple of questions now. I'm going to go ahead and unmute. We'll start with Crystal, and we'll unmute her, and she can ask her question.
Hi, nice to meet you all. Glad that you're here, Erica.
Thank you.
I've been on this thought process recently where I've always loved film, narrative filmmaking, and I've always wanted to do it. And as an adult, I became a flight attendant because, I'll have all this extra time to do it. But then I never made the time to do it. And then this past year, I was like, I need to really take some real steps into videography and cinematography. So I took a course and I started doing wedding videos. But now I'm starting to worry that making wedding videos is just another soft action and not taking the real risks of narrative filmmaking. And I think the line I'm kind of on is bridging between the two pools you mentioned. Like, I'm keeping one foot in the reality pool. I need to make money and this is practical, but still kind of dabbles with what I want, versus the pool of the success of where I want to be. And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it sounds like you've already got this. I mean, it sounds like you're pretty self-aware and you kind of nailed it. But I think that, look, I always tell my clients, it's okay if you need a day job. It's like we all have rent to pay and bills to pay. And so it's okay if you need to find a way to make a living so that you can do your dream job. I think it's about, if you decide that, look, I have this dream in my heart, I really do want to pursue this, I really do want to make this happen, just from shifting your belief into that sentence starts to open up opportunities that you didn't know to look before. The first thing that I'm thinking of is aren't weddings on the weekend? Does that mean that you have your weeks free? Maybe you're editing and you're doing shit like that, but could you hire an editor? I'm making up obstacles I don't even know if you have. Could you hire an editor to do it during the week and you do the weddings on the weekend, and then during the week, you go try to get a PA job, or you go try to work on a film set, something to that extent, or you start working on your own script or whatever, and continue using the wedding thing to pay your bills, but really shifting into this dream becoming a priority. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does a lot, because being raised conservatively, whenever I had dreams, my dad would be like, okay, that's a great backup plan. Mm-hmm. And subconsciously kind of hammered into me the unintended message of, you're not good enough to succeed in that. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm always on a constant brink of fear of making sure I cover my bases, but then I get comfortable in not getting what I wanted because I never really believed I could have it. So I think you're right that I just need to, like you've been discussing in this forum, that, I have to make it a priority and take those risks.
Totally. I mean, look, it's always going to be uncomfortable. It's always going to be scary. It's always going to be a risk. That's why, not everybody is living out their Hollywood dreams, because most people aren't cut out for that or don't want to do that. And the way that I look at backup plans, and by the way, I don't view a day job as a backup plan. I think it's totally fine to have a day job. I was a waitress, before. But to me, a backup plan is you're literally planning to fail.
Yeah.
You're
And that's
literally
how I
like,
took it. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's literally what you're doing when you have a backup plan. And that's why, it always comes back to, no, I believe my success is inevitable. When I believe my success is inevitable, I don't need a backup plan because I'm going to succeed. And so then it becomes easier to shift my energy to making that a priority.
Yes. Thank you so much, Erica. This has really been helpful. Thank you again for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're going to go to Cleo, who's got a question. Cleo in Baton Rouge, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
My question was just kind of like going along with how you guys were, the first question, how you were talking about just like figuring out when to stop doing X and switch to Y. Like, I guess it kind of just, you kind of answered it, but my question was like, how do you know what to do next, I guess?
I think that there's lots of ways to know what to do next. I mean, first of all, if you have a mentor of some sort, you can obviously ask them. In my book situation, I was led to it. Like, I just received my next step, and it did not come when I wanted it to. It came several months after I wanted it to.
Right.
And so I just have to be like, it's okay. It all happens in the perfect timing. So I do think, though, that if you are in the energy of believing your success is inevitable and okay, maybe this path isn't working, but I'm going to try a different strategy. I don't know what that strategy is yet, but I'm just going to sit in the energy of knowing it's coming and believing it. And I know that I'll be led to my next thing. And I just believe, I just believe that we will be. I think you'll be led to the next resource, even if it's something as silly as a Facebook ad popping up in your feed,
Right.
and going because I've gotten clients, long-term coaching clients that found me on a Facebook ad, and they're like, Erica, you have no idea. I was searching for a sign or for something, and then your Facebook ad popped up, and I just really connected with what you had to say, and so sometimes, it comes like that. But I do believe that if you're in the energy of believing that your success is inevitable, you will be led to what is next.
Fabulous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we got Gabriel has got a question for you.
By the way, I love doing this. So ask all the questions. I'm here to help.
Oh,
Hi.
Hi.
So I wanted to ask specifically about the career path of a screenwriter, because that's where I'm trying to focus all of my energy. And I've gotten the impression that the path of being a screenwriter is pretty different than the paths you see for other kind of career fields in this industry, like an actor or a director. So I just wanted to ask your thoughts on what that path for a screenwriter would look like, if it's even possible to nail that down compared to other fields.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I feel like screenwriters, at least with the clients that I've worked with, I feel like writing is one of the most vast in terms of paths to get there. There's so many different ways. And it's also some people have different desires. Some people would love to be a staffed writer on a TV show. Other people are like, I don't want to be in a writer's room all day. I want to sell my script and be done. People have very different desires. So I would start with do you have specific desires in those terms, or TV versus features, or both, or what do you feel about that?
Yeah, so I always figured that I would start in a writer's room situation, because that seems to be a really good kind of stepping stone or beginner's phase before you move on to actually selling your screenplays for features, which is my ultimate goal. And by the way, I would also plan to direct these, but I'm still trying to kind of lean on my screenwriter kind of talents, I guess. So that's my idea of what my career could look like.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that everything you said is true. The thing that I would kind of add a caveat is don't try to dictate how it unfolds, and let it unfold. Because what if you ended up selling a script first before you got into a writer's room? I don't think you need to decide how your path is going to look. I think that there's so many different ways. When I wanted to be a graphic designer, I started as a PA, and the next logical step for a lot of people is to be an art coordinator. And I had no interest in that step. I'm like, no, I'm skipping it. I'm going straight to graphic. I don't want to be a coordinator. I also saw that people who were coordinators who wanted to design were seen as coordinators and they weren't seen as designers. And so I skipped it. I skipped being a coordinator and I was able to go straight to designer, right? So I think that you don't want to dictate your path before it unfolds. And I think that in terms of like, figuring out, where should I start? Which direction should I go in? You know, for writers, there are so many different paths. You know, you can do the writer's room thing. You can be a writer's assistant, writer's PA first before you're a staff writer. You could get an agent/manager and they could get you a writer's room gig, or they could get you pitching opportunities to pitch your scripts, to sell your scripts. You know, you could put something up on the blacklist and it blows up, like what happened to The Post, and that ended up being Oscar nominated film, and all from the blacklist, right? So there's so many different paths. And I think that for a writer, I always tell my clients, like, why don't you start exploring either one of them, or start dipping your toes in a couple of them and see what doors open. You know, like one of my clients who's a writer, she got an internship at a production company where she could start learning how they develop stuff. And that was like one path. And now they just promoted her and she's getting to work in development, which is really great. And she's reading scripts and she loves it. She also emailed like every show in town asking if they needed a writer's PA to try that one, you know, and I put her in touch with a friend of mine to see if they had any openings, and they didn't. And the timing, there just weren't any spots available. There was less filming during COVID, you know. And so that door didn't really open right away for her. So then she's like, okay, let me go with this internship. It's working out, the development. I can maybe pitch things here too. So I think it's about, like, I always say, like, start knocking, like start trying something and see what doors open, see where you're led, see what is more fun for you, what excites you more, you know, and go in that direction. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks.
I know it's not like specific, but.
Yeah. Well, it's just hard to nail down because I think I'm doing what you're saying. I mean, I work on specs and I do reach out to potential managers. So I think I'm being productive, but it's hard to feel productive when you're not getting those immediate results.
I know that, like, so much, especially in the beginning, but I'm sure Brad could attest to this, not even just in the beginning. So much of our careers is like, hurry up and wait, right? And sitting around and waiting, and it feeling like you have no control when you're in the waiting position. And so I think it's about like, okay, cool. If you're submitting to a bunch of managers, you know, after you've submitted to like 150 managers, if you're not getting a response, maybe shift gears and like go back to, okay, let me see if there's any writer's PA or writer's assistant gigs. Okay, let me try that. Let me try putting one of my scripts up on the blacklist. Let me try, like, another thing that I had my client do was see if she could, especially during COVID, while some shows are down and on hiatus, is to cold contact showrunners. And people in writers' rooms who are not currently working, you know, who their shows are down, just to see if they have time to chat, you know, and to start forming like connections, to start building relationships. Yeah. And Cleo, the blacklist, it's a website where you can submit your script and producers and people that want to buy scripts will look at it. There's also a scale system, a rating system. One of my clients had a lot of luck with it. The Post was found on the blacklist, that then Sony, there was like a bidding war, and it can be a good thing, you know?
So Erica, you're talking about cold emailing showrunners. Is where would people find that contact information? Is IMDb Pro a good source, or LinkedIn, or is there something even better?
Yeah, everything. And like, also I would like DM them on Instagram, you know, like people that don't have a huge following. Like there's this one showrunner, or actually maybe he's not the showrunner. He was a show creator that I follow because he created a show I really liked and it was canceled after the second season. And he only has like 2,000 followers. So that means that if I message him and he doesn't have that many followers, he might actually see my message. You know, someone that has 20,000 followers, it's not likely they'll see your message. You can still try. But yeah, so I look on social media, I look on IMDb Pro, definitely LinkedIn, and then also rocketreach.co.
Yeah.
Just type it in the chat here, but that's where I get a lot of email addresses.
You know, a resource I've been using recently is the DGA search engine.
Yeah, totally. The DGA directory is phenomenal. It depends on who you're looking for, you know, like my client who broke in as a PA, she used that, and she emailed like a whole bunch of ADs and then started working as a set PA, and now she's an assistant to an A-list celebrity.
But I've found directors on there who have nothing, not even on Rocket Reach. I mean, obviously not everybody has a listing or it goes to their agent, but I'm surprised by how many high-profile people actually do have, you know, a direct contact on the DGA side. So that's kind of my, you know, secret gold mine.
Yeah. And one thing too that I like, sometimes I do on Instagram, you can leave a voice message and it only allows you 60 seconds, you know, at a time. And so you can leave it. So like, you know, when I was researching agents, there's this one agent that I was obsessed with that reps like Brene Brown and Oprah Winfrey and like these huge books. And I found out she actually retired. She was the lead at William Morris. And I was like, well, maybe she knows of someone. I literally sent her a voice message on Instagram, like, hey, I know you're out of my league and you're not really doing this anymore, but I need an agent for my book. We're developing it into a TV show. We're close to a potential deal. Is there anyone you could recommend? And she messaged me back and said, I'm retired. Try this person. This is their email address. Tell them I sent you. I never even spoke to her before. And she was like, so nice. I mean, not that you'll get that every time, but sometimes it helps, you know, for them to hear your voice and to be personable. And I was like, I'll make sure to just do one of them, just 60 seconds. So they're not listening to a million messages, but I think it's a good thing to try.
You know, one of the things I remind people, you know, when they're a little reticent about asking for things or reaching out to somebody, like, you know, do you think I'm going to be bothering them? I always remind them the same thing that I told Lindsay before, is that nobody starts out at the top. At some point, all of these people were in that same place. And I hope that most of them have the sensitivity that in order to be where they are, they also had to ask, and they also had to have people give them a hand up. And you know, we call that paying it forward. And so hopefully, you know, the good ones that you call are going to be conscientious and you know, not be unkind to you.
Yeah. I mean, like I was going to say, every now and then I do get annoyed when like someone just messaged me today, and I didn't read his latest message. I think he's mad at me, but he was like, hey, I'm a new filmmaker and I just moved to LA from Maryland and your work is so great. And, you know, I'd love to pick your brain. And I was like, I do this for a living. You're not picking my brain. I didn't say that, but I just said, oh, I don't do any free coaching sessions right now. But, you know, I have a whole podcast, over 100 episodes of some free content. You know, my book is only $21, you know, way cheaper than my coaching. Go check it out. And he was like, oh no, I wanted to be friends.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, but you said the phrase pick your brain. So I will say, like, just be conscious of how you're asking, you know, like be conscious of someone's time. Like I always say, like, be brief, be complimentary, and be specific. So if you want to like ask a specific question instead of, could you give me advice? That's a very general question. Ask something specific.
Yeah. When people email me and say, how are you doing? Or can you tell me how you shoot a movie? Sometimes I don't even respond.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you say, what light did you use? You know, and I think you pointed him in the right direction. You know, you're not responsible to bring somebody 100% up to speed, you know, send them your coaching website, you know, I mean, that's a resource. And that's, I mean, I think that's all any of us can do, but, you know, you didn't slam the door on him. But
I like the specific, you know, like what you said, like what, like, you know, like if someone messaged you and was like, hey, Brad, I watched the Christmas movie. Congratulations. It was so great. I really appreciated the post that you made about how one of the shots you had to do when the sun went down and you had to cheat it. And wow, did you use this lens? How did you achieve, you know, like a specific question that makes Brad go, oh, I'd be happy to tell that kid, you know.
And that brings up another point that I always tell people is, if you're going to reach out to somebody, especially a high value person, check their social media. Google them, know who you're talking with. Don't just know their films, know their hobbies. Where did they go camping? Where did they go to college? Because not only will you have a more meaningful conversation, but you know what? Maybe you guys went to the same school. Maybe you have the same hometown. You look on Facebook and, oh, your uncle is friends with this guy. Mm-hmm. So that is so much better than just reaching out cold and being, you know, Joe Nobody.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, wait, here we go. Here's Lindsay's got a question again, so we will go back to Lindsay.
What's up, Lindsay?
Hi,
Enough.
I'm just in for a penny in the pound at this point. No, I guess my question to you was, you make good points of, not being the smartest person in the room and, trying different strategies and, regrouping and then trying again on a different, platform or a different, way. But at what point should you try and change your strategy? Like, what are indicators? I mean, is there an indication before you've literally emailed every single, person that you can conceivably buy or borrow their email, or, where do you kind of consider this to be a success versus just time to try something else?
I think for me, it's like a feeling I get where if I'm like, oh my God, I don't want to email another fucking person. Like if you're so sick of what you're doing, you don't feel inspired by it anymore, and you just feel discouraged, like you need to switch up your energy. Like that's a good indicator that you should try something different. You can go back to the original strategy, anytime, like after you feel refreshed. But when you're starting to feel discouraged, and I mean, look, you might feel discouraged after 30 people. And to me, that is too soon to be ending. Just because, especially in something like agents or managers, like there's hundreds of agents and managers, like 30 is not an indication that you're not good enough for an agent or whatever. Like one of my clients who booked like a high level manager for acting, she emailed like 300, managers. So I think in general, you want to ask yourself, like, do I feel like I've exhausted this avenue, at least for now? Like with my book, for example, I didn't email that many agents and publishers. Like I only submitted to like maybe 15, very small amount, but I had finished the book. I had printed an initial run. I got really good feedback, and people were saying, I want to buy this book for my friend. I want to buy this book for this person. Oh my God, I can't wait till your book is officially out. And I was like, oh, maybe I need to get this book out now. Like if I do get a publisher, it might not come out for another year. So I kind of like let the, like, I like my coach says, like the book had a life of its own, and I had to see where it was led to the next thing. So I didn't really exhaust my agent publisher list, but I noticed that there was momentum building in one direction. And so I was like, let me ride this wave with that momentum. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool.
So we're getting close to the end of the time. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and ask them. Another note that I had, Erica, from your book that I thought was a really important point is fighting for your limitations.
Yes. I have a good story for that. It's an embarrassing story. So hopefully it'll, make people feel less alone. When I was first starting out learning all of this, I had a coach, and I was in this program, and we had a Facebook group where we would get, feedback from the coach. And I was really struggling with money, and I felt like the starving artist. And I just like, I took that on as my identity. And I was like, I'm broke. Like I need a haircut. I can't even afford a haircut right now. This really sucks. And my coach was like, Erica, you are abundant. There's an abundance of opportunity around you. You are abundant. I'm like, look at my bank account. Look at it. I am not abundant. I have nothing in there. And it went back and forth where for several comments where I was fighting for my limitations. I was like saying to her, no, let me prove to you how broke I am. Will you please let me show you so that you can get on board and agree with me that yes, I am broke. And I was fighting to stay where I was. And what she was trying to get me to see is that if you believe that you are abundant and that there's an abundance of opportunity around you and that you are always supported, maybe you'll open your eyes and see that there's money all around you and opportunities all around you. It's like if I were not an idiot in that moment, I could have been like, maybe I'll go to Supercuts and get a $10 haircut. I don't need my $100 LA salon haircut. I can cut my hair myself. Maybe I could sell some things to my business this week and make some extra money, and that'll pay for my haircut. Maybe I could ask my parents to borrow some money for a haircut. Like all of these ideas exist, but I didn't want to see them. Instead, I was too busy fighting for my limitations and, expressing to my coach, no, I'm so broke. You have to get on board with this story. There's no other way.
And then also you talk about asking for what you want. And I personally have an attachment to that. You've already kind of mentioned my shyness. And when I was a little kid, I was, oh my God, I was terrible. There was this one episode where my mom took my brother and me to 7-Eleven, and she'd always taken us in and gotten us Slurpees. And this one time she pulled up the car and just sat there and said, here's some money. And we literally were little kids. We sat in the car and just cried. And she said, if you're not going in, you're not going to get the Slurpees. And, she left, and that's one less Slurpee I've ever had, but it was one of the most important lessons. I mean, I'm sure it broke her heart to do that, but she taught me the importance. And one of the things that she told me, she says, ask for what you want, because the worst thing that's going to happen is somebody is going to tell you no. And I think, for a lot of us, and even me today, there are circumstances where, there's so much resistance to just even simply asking, but like you say in another chapter, if you don't buy the lottery ticket, you're never going to win. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a great little story that you may have heard it before. I can't remember when I first heard it, but it's a story of this man who was really struggling financially, and his family was struggling, and they really needed some money. So every day this man would get down on his knees and go to church and pray to God and say, God, please help me win the lottery. My family really needs the money. We are really struggling. Please, God, help me win the lottery. And he would do this every day. And he just was getting so frustrating because he wasn't winning the lottery. He wasn't getting an answer. He wasn't nothing was happening. And so one day he got down on his knees just like he always did. And he said, God, please, are you even listening? Please help me win the lottery. My family really needs help. And then he finally heard an answer, and he heard this booming voice say, go buy a lottery ticket and I'll help you. And I just love that so much, because I think, that we all do things like that. And now I forget what the first question was before you mentioned that story. But
it was just about asking for what you want.
Right. Ask for, yeah, totally. Ask for what you want, and then be willing to take the steps. If someone gives you, direction, if someone emails Brad and says, how do I get started as a DP? And he says, well, you could do X, Y, and Z. Go do X, Y, and Z. You ask for it, then go do, what you're told. But you won't get anything that you won't ask for. The writing thing. Like, I know someone that was that was a producer's assistant for a while on a show and wanted to be a writer. It's like, oh, I'm not moving up. They're not promoting me. Cool. How many times did you ask? Like, some people are like, oh, well, they should just know. They should just assume I want it. They know I want to be a writer. Oh, I asked once. Like, you have to be persistent. You have to actually ask for what you want. You can't complain that you're not getting it if you're not actually asking.
So we don't have any more questions, and we're almost at the 2-hour mark. Would you like to have some closing comments?
Buy my book. If you guys want it, pre-order. It officially releases next Tuesday. I'm having a virtual launch party that's free. If you guys want to come to that, the sign up's not up yet. Well, actually it is up, but it'll be announced tomorrow. And if you pre-order and email me your receipt, I have a bonus chapter that I wrote that I also have an audio of that I narrated. And so you'll get a PDF and a narration of the audio of the bonus chapter if you email me your receipt. And I don't know. I mean, thank you guys so much for having me and for asking good questions and being vulnerable and sharing and listening to us go on and on about this damn book. Just thank you.
Thank you for being a guest. And I just want to remind everybody that Erica has a website. She's got a podcast on YouTube. She's got...
It's not really on YouTube. I think I only put like 2 episodes up. Okay. But it's on iTunes and Spotify. And
iTunes and Spotify. And she's got a Facebook page, Hollywood Success Community, right?
Oh, yeah, the group. Yeah, I don't really like post in there much, but you're welcome to join.
Okay.
But Instagram, I'm like more active on Instagram these days. So come find me at Hollywood Success.
And then, you know, Erica also does webinars and workshops. She offers private coaching, you know, maybe once the pandemic is over, she'll do some live events again. But the one thing that I want to tell you about Erica, and we go back to the whole conversation about investing in your business. You know, when you go out and you buy that lottery ticket, your odds of winning anything are not that good. But I will tell you that if you buy the lottery ticket with, you know, this $21.49 book, $21.49 on Amazon, or you invest in, you know, one of Erica's programs, some of which are really modest, you are guaranteed a winning ticket. I mean, all the tickets are winners, and the magnitude of your win is proportional to what you do with what you get out of it. So I want you to consider that, and just let you know what a big difference Erica has made for me, you know, in giving me fresh ideas that I can put into action. They're not abstract. They're actual steps, they're actual strategies. And, you know, it's not even necessarily that she hands me the dots to connect so much as she's the catalyst for me to have epiphanies. While I was reading this book earlier, I suddenly had this epiphany about, you know, something that I need to be doing that I'm not doing. You know, somebody like Erica and her coaching and her book and her websites are a priceless resource. You know, you've got to build your skills. You've got to be a good filmmaker. You've got to network, but you also need the fire. And Erica brings the fire. And I have never met anybody anywhere near as effective as her. So go, guys, go out and engage with her. And thank you, everybody, for tonight.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Brad.
You're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a good night.
Bye. Have a great night.